The heel came down on the card like it was nothing, like it was trash. A little girl's handmade card, glitter glue and purple marker. The words, "For the kids," smeared into a puddle of snowmelt on the stone steps of a five-star hotel. The woman who stepped on it was the CEO of a charity foundation for children. The man she had just shoved aside, the man in the wet shoes, the man she called a fraud and ordered security to remove. That man owned the building she was standing in. He owned the foundation. He owned her salary. He had built everything she was now using to humiliate his 8-year-old daughter. She just didn't know it yet. But what happened next inside that ballroom, when 300 people watched a little girl hold up that ruined card and say 2 words to her dead mother's portrait? That is the part of this story you will never forget. Drop a comment with the city you were watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because stories like this one don't come around often. Nathan Mercer had not worn this suit in 8 months. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror and pulled the knot of his tie straight, and his hands were steady, which surprised him. The last time he had worn this tie, Catherine had been standing behind him, reaching around to fix the knot herself, because she said he always pulled it slightly to the left. She had been right about that. She'd been right about most things. "Dad?" He turned. Lily was standing in the hallway. Red velvet dress, black shoes with small silver buckles. Her hair was pulled back with a clip that Catherine had bought at a craft fair 2 summers ago. She was holding the envelope against her chest with both hands, the way a person holds something they have decided is important. "You look beautiful," Nathan said. "I know," Lily said. Not with vanity, with the plain certainty of an 8-year-old who has looked in the mirror and made her assessment. "Are we going now?" Nathan checked his watch. "We're going now." They walked to the car. The snow had been falling for an hour, and the parking lot was white and quiet. Nathan opened the passenger door, and Lily climbed in, still holding the envelope. He walked around to the driver's side and sat behind the wheel and started the engine. The heater took a moment. Lily blew into her hands. "Dad," she said, "do you think there'll be a lot of people there?" "Probably." "Like how many?" "Maybe 300. She thought about this. "That's a lot of people to help the kids." Nathan looked at her. She was looking straight ahead through the windshield at the falling snow. He wanted to say something about her mother. He wanted to say that Catherine would have been proud. But Lily already knew that. She did not need to be told things she already knew. That was one of the qualities she had inherited directly from her mother, an impatience with unnecessary confirmation. "Yeah," Nathan said, "that's a lot of people." They drove. The roads between Denver and the Aspen Crown Hotel were plowed, but still slick in places. Nathan drove carefully. He was always careful with Lily in the car. Catherine used to tease him about it. She used to say he drove like a man transporting museum glass. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "What if they don't let us in?" He glanced at her. "Why wouldn't they let us in?" "I don't know. What if they don't know who we are?" Nathan almost smiled. Not quite. The muscles moved, but the expression did not fully arrive. "They'll know who we are, sweetheart." He said it with certainty. He had no reason to believe otherwise. He was wrong. They had not talked about the foundation much over the past 8 months. Nathan had made a decision after Catherine's death, not a conscious one, more like a reflex, to separate Lily from the machinery of the organization. The board meetings, the financial calls, the operational discussions about program funding. He had told himself he was protecting her. What he had actually been doing was retreating. And he had taken Lily with him into that retreat without asking whether she wanted to go. 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday morning over pancakes, Lily had ended the retreat herself. She had come to the kitchen table holding a yellow legal pad. Nathan recognized it immediately. It was Catherine's, the one from the nightstand, the one she had been writing on in the final weeks, when she could no longer sit up without help, but could still hold a pen. Lily set it on the table beside her plate. "I found Mom's notes," she said. Nathan put down his spatula. "Where did you find that?" "In the box in the hallway closet, the one with her things." Nathan looked at the legal pad. Catherine's handwriting. Neat, organized, precise. Even at the end, even when the medication made her hand shake, her handwriting had remained clear. She had been that kind of person, the kind who insisted on clarity even when everything around her was falling apart. "I read some of it," Lily said. "She wrote letters to the board. She told them what to do after—" She paused. "After she was gone." Nathan sat down across from her. He did not reach for the legal pad. He was not ready to read it. He might never be ready to read it. "The last page," Lily said. "She wrote something." "What did she write?" Lily recited it from memory. She had clearly read it more than once. "Please don't let the children disappear." The kitchen was very quiet. The pancake on the stove was starting to burn. Nathan could smell it, but did not move. "Dad," Lily said, "I want to go to the gala." "Lily." "I want to bring something. For the kids." "Mom would want me to bring something." He looked at his daughter for a long time. She looked back at him without wavering. She had Catherine's eyes. Not just the color, the steadiness behind them. "Okay," he said. That evening, Lily sat at the kitchen table with an index card, a bottle of gold glitter glue, a purple marker, and a small piece of ribbon for a bow. She worked on the card with the intense focus of a child who believes the thing she is making has to be exactly right. Nathan stood at the stove making dinner and watched her without turning his head. She worked on it for 3 evenings. She revised the bow twice. She practiced the lettering on scrap paper before writing on the card itself. When she was done, she held it up. "For the kids," it said in purple marker, with a gold glitter border and a small, lopsided bow glued to the top corner. "That's perfect," Nathan said. "I know," she said, and she slid it into a cream-colored envelope and pressed the flap closed, and wrote nothing on the outside, because she said the card was for everyone, not for someone specific. Now, in the car, she held that envelope against the front of her velvet dress as they pulled into the parking garage of the Aspen Crown. Nathan turned off the engine. The garage was cold, and the sound of their doors echoed. They walked together toward the exit, through the garage, across the short stretch of open sidewalk, and into the falling snow. Nathan put his hand on Lily's shoulder. The snow landed on her hair and on the envelope and on the toes of Nathan's black dress shoes, which were already going pale from the cold. They reached the base of the stone steps. Above them, the hotel entrance glowed, gold-framed glass doors, warm light from the lobby, shadows of guests moving inside. Nathan took a breath. He had not been in this building since Catherine's funeral reception, which had been held in the second-floor event space 8 months ago. 300 people had come. He remembered almost none of it. "Ready?" he said. "Ready," Lily said. They climbed the steps. A woman was standing just inside the entrance. She had dark hair swept sharply back, and she wore a tailored black blazer and held a clipboard. She was already watching them. She had been watching them since the parking garage exit. Her name was Victoria Crane. She had been appointed CEO of the Foundation's philanthropic division 8 months ago by the board during Nathan's medical leave. A cardiac episode, mild, but enough to put him in the hospital for 2 days. 2 days during which the board had moved with a speed that, in retrospect, suggested the decision had been made before the ambulance arrived. Victoria pushed the door open before they reached it. She stepped into the gap between the door and the frame, not quite blocking the entrance, but making it clear that the entrance was hers to grant. "This is a private event," she said. Her voice was polite in the way that expensive things are polite, smooth on the surface and hard underneath. "Black tie. Invitations only." "We have an invitation," Nathan said. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced the cream envelope, the formal invitation that had been sent to his home address, his name embossed on the front in gold lettering. He held it out to her. Victoria glanced at the envelope. She did not take it. "That name is not on my current list," she said. "We updated the guest registry last week." "My name is Nathan Mercer." She tilted her head, not with recognition, not even with curiosity, with impatience. The look a person gives when they have already categorized you and are now waiting for you to accept the category. "I understand that's what you'd like me to believe," she said. She lowered her voice slightly, as though she were doing him a courtesy by being discreet. "But we've had individuals before who attempt to use this kind of occasion to solicit. It's disruptive for our guests. It's disruptive for the children we're here to support." Nathan's hand was still extended, holding the invitation. "I'm asking you to look at the invitation." "Sir," the word dropped the temperature between them by several degrees. "I'm going to ask you to step back from the entrance." "I'm not stepping back. My daughter and I are here for the gala. My wife built this foundation." "Sir." Victoria reached forward and took Nathan's arm. Not gently, not the way you guide someone, the way you move an obstacle. She gripped his forearm through the wool of his jacket and pulled him 2 steps to the side, away from the center of the doorway, toward the iron railing that ran along the edge of the landing. His dress shoe caught the edge of the wet granite. His foot slid. He stumbled sideways, catching himself on the railing with his free hand. The motion was awkward and sudden, the kind of movement that strips a person of composure in an instant. Lily made a sound, not a scream, a sharp intake of breath. The specific noise a child makes when the world does something it is not supposed to do. The cream-colored envelope fell from Lily's hand. It struck the wet stone and opened on impact. The card slid out. Gold glitter glue, purple marker, a lopsided bow. For the kids. It landed face up in a thin puddle of snowmelt. Victoria looked down at it. And then she stepped forward, and the heel of her shoe came down on the corner of the card. It was not deliberate. Or maybe it was. It did not matter. The heel pressed into the card, and the sound it made was very small and very final. The glitter smeared. The ink bled. The corner crumpled under the weight. "Security," Victoria said, lifting her chin toward the 2 guards visible just inside the lobby. "Please remove these 2 from the entrance." Nathan looked at the card on the ground. He looked at the heel mark on it. He looked at the glitter dissolving into the snowmelt. Then he crouched down slowly and picked it up. The bottom corner was wet and torn. The bow was crushed. The purple letters had smudged, but you could still read them. For the kids. He held the card in both hands and looked at it for a long moment, and his face was very still. "She made that card." It was Lily's voice, quiet, steady. The particular steadiness of a child who is using every bit of control she has not to break apart. "My mom. She told me to bring something." Victoria's expression did not change. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. She said it the way a person reads a line from a script they did not write. "It's for the kids," Lily said. She was looking at the card in her father's hands. "Mom said if we stopped helping the kids, it would have all been for nothing." Victoria's mouth tightened, almost imperceptibly. She looked at Lily, then at Nathan, and then she said something, quietly, under her breath, almost to herself. The dead mother angle is very moving. The words hung in the cold air between the three of them. They did not dissipate. They did not soften. They sat in the space where they had been spoken, and they stayed. It did not matter whether Victoria intended Lily to hear it. Nathan heard it. And from the way Lily's face went blank, the way her eyes stopped blinking, the way her body went completely still in her red velvet dress on the wet stone landing, Nathan understood that his daughter had heard it too. He felt something in his chest. It was not grief. He had lived inside grief for 8 months. He knew its weight, its texture, the way it sat behind his ribs like a second heartbeat. This was not that. This was past grief. On the other side of it, something cold and clear and absolutely composed. "Lily," he said softly, "can you hold this for me?" He handed her the card. She took it with both hands and held it against her chest. She held it the way a soldier holds a flag, not loosely, not carelessly, as though someone had trusted her with it, and she had decided she would not let go. Nathan straightened. He adjusted his jacket. He wiped the snow melt from his hands, and he turned to face Victoria Crane with the particular stillness of a man who has made a decision that he will not revisit. Not tonight. Not ever. "My name," he said, "is Nathan Mercer. I am the founder of Greystone Capital. I hold 71% of the parent equity that funds this foundation, this building, and your salary." He paused, not for effect, because what he said next needed to arrive clearly. "I would like you to check that claim before you say another word." Victoria's expression moved. It was involuntary. The kind of rearrangement a face makes when the floor beneath it has shifted and the body has not yet caught up. She had heard the name. She would have had to be completely, recklessly incurious not to have heard it, given her position. But names heard in boardroom briefings, and names standing on a wet hotel landing in scuffed shoes, exist in different realities. She was now watching those two realities collide. Her clipboard dropped slightly in her hand. "Mr. Mercer." She said it the way people say a name when they are hoping the name turns out to be wrong. "The board was informed that you were on an extended personal leave, that you were unavailable." "I was grieving," Nathan said. "I'm here now." He reached into his pocket and held out his phone. The screen showed 3 missed calls from a contact saved as T. Whitfield, board, and a text message from the same number, sent 11 minutes ago. "Nathan, I understand you're at the door. Please come in immediately. We need to talk." Victoria read the screen. Her face performed another calculation, the kind that involves the distance between who you are and who you have just been in front of witnesses. Slowly, she handed the phone back. Her clipboard slipped from her other hand and struck the stone with a flat, sharp crack. She did not bend to pick it up. The lobby door pushed open. Thomas Whitfield stepped out into the cold. 62 years old, broad shoulders, a tuxedo that had been tailored for a man who used to be larger. He extended his hand immediately. "Nathan," he said, "come inside. Please, both of you." Thomas looked at Victoria, then at Lily, then at the damaged card Lily was holding against her dress. His expression changed in a way that was small and painful to watch. "Thank you, Thomas," Nathan said. He put his hand on Lily's shoulder and guided her toward the door. He did not look at Victoria, not because he was avoiding her, because she had stopped being relevant. They stepped through the glass doors and into the warmth of the lobby. Lily pressed closer to his side. Her hand found his hand and held it. "Dad," she whispered, "is it over?" Nathan looked down at his daughter. Her face was tired and alert at the same time. The face of a child who has just been through something she should not have had to go through. "Not yet," he said quietly. "But we're inside now." He squeezed her hand. They walked forward into the warm amber light, and 60 pairs of eyes turned to watch them. And Nathan Mercer stopped in the center of the lobby because something was wrong. Something was missing from the walls, and in its place was something that should not have been there. And what Nathan discovered in the next 60 seconds would change everything. Not just for the evening, not just for the foundation, but for 300 people in that ballroom who had no idea that the charity they were celebrating had been hollowed out from the inside. Nathan stood in the center of the lobby and did not move. The north wall had always held photographs. That was the first thing Catherine had insisted on when they designed this space together 11 years ago. She had stood in this exact spot with a roll of blue painter's tape and marked where each frame would hang. Not corporate logos, not brand statements, photographs. Children at program graduations, families moving into stable housing, kids sitting cross-legged on gymnasium floors at the summer reading initiative in Pueblo, a boy holding up a certificate with both hands and grinning so wide you could count the gap where his front teeth used to be. Those photographs were gone, every single one. In their place, mounted behind glass in 4 different sizes, was the Greystone Capital corporate logo. Polished, symmetrical, expensive. The kind of display that exists to tell people with money that their money is in serious hands. The kind of display that has nothing to do with children. Nathan's hand tightened at his side. Lily was still holding his other hand. She was looking up at the wall too, but she did not recognize what was missing. She had been too young during the last gala to remember the photographs in detail. She only knew that something about her father's posture had changed. "Dad," she said, "what's wrong?" Nathan did not answer immediately. He was counting. The wall had held 43 photographs the last time he had been here. 43 faces. 43 children whose lives had been changed by the foundation Catherine built. Now, there were 4 logos. "Thomas," Nathan said. His voice was quiet, but Thomas Whitfield heard it and came closer immediately. "What happened to the photographs?" Thomas looked at the wall. His jaw tightened. That was one of the changes made in the restructuring. Victoria and Marcus Devlin pushed it through the Communications Committee in September. They called it a brand alignment initiative. "A brand alignment initiative," Nathan repeated. He said the words the way you say something that tastes wrong. "I voted against it," Thomas said, "for whatever that's worth now. I was outnumbered, 3-2. Who voted for it?" "Devlin, Victoria, and Frank Salter." Nathan knew Frank Salter. Catherine had brought him onto the board 5 years ago because he ran a logistics company, and she said the foundation needed someone who understood supply chains. Frank had always been quiet in meetings, agreeable, the kind of board member who nods first and asks questions later. Nathan had never thought much about him either way. Now he thought about him. "Where is Devlin?" Nathan asked. Thomas hesitated. "He's inside, table 7, near the windows." "Nathan, there are things I need to show you tonight. Things that go beyond the photographs." "I can see that." "Not here. After the program. I have documents." Nathan looked at Thomas. Thomas met his eyes and held them. And in that look was something Nathan had not expected. It was not just concern. It was fear. Thomas Whitfield was afraid. Not of Nathan. Of what Nathan was about to find. "Fine," Nathan said. After the program, he turned back toward the lobby. 60 guests had been watching the confrontation at the entrance. Some openly, some from behind champagne glasses and turned shoulders. Now they were watching Nathan with a different kind of attention. Several were holding their phones at hip level, screens angled upward. Nathan was aware of this. He did not care about it. What he cared about was the fact that his dead wife's photographs had been pulled off the wall of the foundation she built and replaced with a corporate logo, and that somewhere inside this building, 300 people were attending a gala in Catherine's name, raising money in Catherine's name, and the woman who had just shoved Nathan aside at the entrance and stepped on his daughter's card was the person they had put in charge. He thought about the yellow legal pad. Please don't let the children disappear. He had let them disappear. Not deliberately, not maliciously, but through absence, which in the end produced the same result. "I'd like to say something," Nathan said. He did not say it loudly. He did not raise his voice. He spoke at conversational volume, standing in the center of the lobby, and the room went quiet in the specific way a room goes quiet when the people in it understand that the atmosphere has shifted, and the next thing said will matter. Thomas put a hand on his arm. "Nathan, are you sure you want to do this here?" "Yes." Thomas removed his hand. He stepped back half a step, not away from Nathan, beside him. It was a small movement, but several people in the lobby noticed it, and what they noticed was that the board chairman of the foundation had just physically positioned himself next to the man in the wet shoes and not next to the woman with the clipboard. "My name is Nathan Mercer," Nathan said. He looked at the faces around the lobby. Some he recognized, some he did not. "I founded Greystone Capital 22 years ago. Through our philanthropic division, I established the Catherine Mercer Foundation, which tonight, in my wife's name, is hosting this gala." He paused, not for effect, because the next sentence was harder to say than he had expected. "My wife built this foundation from scratch. She died 8 months ago." The lobby was completely silent. "My daughter made a card to bring tonight because her mother asked her to keep helping. That card was stepped on at the entrance by the woman who was appointed to run the organization my wife created." He let the sentence end there. He did not elaborate. He did not describe what had happened on the landing. He did not need to. 11 people had filmed it. "I would like someone to explain to me," Nathan said, "why the photographs of the children we serve have been removed from this wall." Nobody spoke. A woman near the coat check put her hand over her mouth. A man in a navy tuxedo looked at the floor. Near the back of the lobby, half hidden by a stone column, a man in a gray tuxedo took a quiet step sideways, creating distance between himself and the spot where he had just been standing. That man was Marcus Devlin. Nathan saw the movement. He filed it. Victoria Crane had followed them inside. She was standing near the entrance with the composure of someone who has not yet decided which version of this situation she is losing. Her clipboard was gone. She had left it on the stone outside. Her hands hung at her sides, and for the first time since Nathan had seen her, she was not holding anything between herself and the room. Nathan looked at her. "Your employment with the Greystone Group and its affiliated foundations is terminated," he said. "Effective immediately. Human Resources will be in contact regarding severance documentation." He said it without heat, without anger, without raising his voice even slightly, which made it considerably worse than if he had shouted. The 2 security guards who had been moving toward Nathan at Victoria's instruction had stopped. They looked at each other. They looked at Nathan. They looked at Thomas Whitfield standing beside Nathan. They moved back to their stations by the door. Victoria stood still for a moment. Her face went through something that was not quite an expression. It was more like a series of calculations, arriving at the same answer from different directions. And the answer was that this was real, and it was not going to reverse. And the 60 people in this lobby had just watched it happen. She walked to the reception desk. She set something down on it. Nathan did not see what. Then she walked to the side exit, opened the door, and left. The door closed behind her with a soft, definitive sound, the kind of sound that ends a chapter. A murmur moved through the lobby, voices low and uncertain, the sound of people reassessing the evening they had walked into. Thomas touched Nathan's arm again. "The ballroom," he said. "Come." Nathan looked down at Lily. She was still holding the card against her chest. She had not moved during his entire speech. She had stood beside him, with her back straight and her chin up, and she had not cried. She had done exactly what her mother would have done. She had stood her ground. "You okay?" Nathan asked. Lily nodded. "Are we going inside now?" "We're going inside now." The ballroom was through the carved mahogany doors at the end of the corridor. Thomas pushed them open, and Nathan and Lily walked through. 300 people turned to look. Nathan had expected that. He had expected the heads turning, the whispers, the phones. He had prepared himself for the attention. What he had not prepared himself for was the portrait. It was 20 feet tall, commissioned for the Gala's 10th anniversary 3 years ago. It had been in the building's archive since Catherine's death. Someone had brought it out and hung it on the far wall of the ballroom, centered above the stage, lit from above by 2 soft spotlights. The portrait showed Catherine at a foundation site visit. She was crouching beside a 7-year-old boy in a winter coat that was 2 sizes too large. Catherine was laughing. Her hair was falling across her face. The boy was pointing at something outside the frame, and Catherine was looking at whatever it was with the expression she always wore when a child showed her something. Full attention, full delight, as though nothing else in the world existed. Nathan stopped walking, his chest locked. He could not have moved forward in that moment if someone had pushed him. Thomas had done this. Nathan understood it immediately. Thomas had given the instruction to hang the portrait the moment he learned Nathan was coming. It was not a gesture. It was a correction. It was Thomas saying, without words, "This is what this room is supposed to look like." Nathan stood in the doorway of the ballroom and looked at his wife's face, 20 feet tall and radiant, and for the first time in 8 months, grief hit him not as weight, but as warmth. Not as something pressing down, but as something breaking open. Lily stopped beside him. She looked up at the portrait. She looked at it for a long time. The room was so quiet that Nathan could hear the candle flames on the nearest table shifting in the draft from the open door. "Hi, Mom," Lily said. She said it simply, the way she used to say it when Catherine came into the kitchen in the morning. The way she said it when Catherine picked her up from school. There was no performance in it. There was no awareness of the 300 people watching. There was only a girl talking to her mother. The chamber trio near the stage had stopped playing. A woman near the front of the ballroom pressed the back of her hand to her mouth and turned away. A man at a center table removed his glasses and set them on the linen tablecloth and looked down. Lily held up the card. The wet, glitter-smudged, heel-marked card. She held it up toward the portrait, the way a child holds up a drawing for a parent's approval. "I brought it," she said. "Like you said." Nathan put his hand on her shoulder. He did not trust himself to speak. He was aware that his eyes were burning, and his throat had closed, and that 300 people were watching him, and that it did not matter. None of it mattered. What mattered was that his daughter was talking to her mother, and her mother could not answer, and the card she had made with such care over 3 evenings at the kitchen table was damaged, but she had brought it anyway. That was what Catherine would have said to do. Bring it anyway, even if it's imperfect, even if it's damaged. Bring it. The chamber trio began playing again, something slow and soft. The room exhaled. Nathan guided Lily to a table near the front. Thomas had reserved seats for them, which meant Thomas had known Nathan was coming before Nathan had arrived at the entrance, which meant Thomas had been trying to reach him. Nathan remembered the missed calls on his phone. 3 from Thomas. He had ignored them during the drive. He had not been ignoring Thomas specifically. He had been ignoring everything connected to the foundation for 8 months. The calls had been one more thing he was not ready for. He pulled out Lily's chair, and she sat down and placed the card carefully on the table in front of her, smoothing the damaged corner with her fingertip. Nathan sat beside her. A waiter came. Water for both of them. Lily took a sip and looked around the ballroom with wide, careful eyes. She was taking it in. The ceiling, the string lights, the candles, the people. She had never been to a gala before. Catherine had always said she was too young. Catherine had planned to bring her when she turned 10. Catherine had not made it to 10. "Dad," Lily said, "this is what Mom built?" "This is what Mom built." "It's big." It started small. It started at our kitchen table. Lily considered this. "Our kitchen table?" "Our old house, before you were born. Mom and I sat at the kitchen table, and she told me she wanted to start a foundation. She had a notebook. She had a plan. She had already talked to 3 families who needed help." Nathan paused. "She didn't ask me for permission. She asked me for a folding table and a phone line." "What did you say?" "I said yes. I always said yes to your mother when she had that look." "What look?" "The look that meant she had already decided and was giving me the courtesy of pretending I had a choice." Lily smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real, and it broke something in Nathan's chest that needed to be broken. The first course was served. Nathan did not eat much. Lily ate everything on her plate and asked if there was more bread. Nathan flagged a waiter and got her more bread. She buttered it with the precision of a surgeon. Around them, the gala continued. Speeches were given from the stage. A video played showing clips of children in the programs. Nathan watched the video and recognized several of the locations: the community center in Pueblo, the gymnasium in Colorado Springs, the housing campus in Denver. Catherine had driven to each of those sites personally, sometimes 3 in a week, sometimes with Lily asleep in the car seat in the back. After the first course, Thomas appeared at the table. He came without a plate. He sat down across from Nathan and placed a manila folder on the linen between them. He had the look of a man who had been trying to have this conversation for a very long time. "I need you to look at these," Thomas said. "Not in detail, not tonight, but you need to see them." Nathan looked at the folder. It was thick. The corners were worn in a way that suggested it had been opened and closed many times. "What is it?" Nathan asked. "Financial decisions that were made in your absence. Decisions that should have required your authorization. Decisions that should have been yours and only yours to approve." Nathan opened the folder. He did not read the documents in detail. This was not the time or the place. But he read enough. He read the summary pages. He read the budget reallocations. He read the line items. The Foundation's core youth programs in Denver and Colorado Springs had been defunded. The after-school tutoring initiative, gone. The transitional housing stipend program, gone. The school supply distribution network that had operated in 4 counties for 9 years, suspended. The money had been redirected to a budget line described as organizational infrastructure and executive capacity building. Nathan had spent 22 years in business. He knew what those words meant. They meant the money had been moved somewhere it was not supposed to go. There was more. A series of payments to a consulting firm called Summit Strategy Partners. No prior relationship with the foundation. No documented deliverables. 12 payments over 11 months. Nathan added them in his head before he reached the bottom of the summary sheet, where Thomas had circled a number in red ink. $82 million. Nathan looked at the number. He read it again. He closed the folder slowly and placed both hands flat on the table. Summit Strategy Partners, he said. Registered in Delaware, Thomas said. The sole listed officer is a name that appears nowhere else in public records. No LinkedIn, no business filings, no tax history. It's a ghost. We believe it's a shell company. Who signed the authorizations? Marcus Devlin. Every single one. But some of these approvals required board-level sign-off, and the signatures on file are— Thomas paused, choosing the word carefully. Irregular. Irregular how? As in, we believe they were forged. Nathan sat very still. Across the ballroom, Marcus Devlin was at his table near the windows. He was laughing at something a woman beside him had said. He looked relaxed. He looked like a man who had no concerns in the world, who had never authorized a fraudulent payment, who had never defunded a children's literacy program and funneled the money into a Delaware shell company. He looked like a man who believed he was safe. Who else knows about this? Nathan asked. 3 people on the board, our outside counsel, and Victoria Crane. Thomas lowered his voice. She signed 2 of the authorizations. Whether she fully understood what she was signing, he stopped. I don't know. I think the answer is that she understood enough. Nathan looked at the folder. He looked at the red circle around the number. $82 million. Money that was supposed to reach children. Money that Catherine had raised through years of phone calls and grant applications and gala speeches and site visits. Money that was supposed to prevent children from disappearing. He thought about the yellow legal pad. He thought about Lily finding it in the hallway closet. He thought about her sitting at the kitchen table, reciting the last line from memory. Please don't let the children disappear. They had not just let the children disappear. They had taken the money that was keeping them visible and stolen it. I want a full forensic audit, Nathan said. His voice was calm. Every account, every transaction, going back 4 years. I want the team in the office Monday morning. I've already made preliminary contact with a firm. They can start Monday. And I want outside counsel to contact the appropriate federal offices. Thomas nodded. I'll make the call tonight. Nathan slid the folder back across the table. He looked at Lily. She had finished her bread and was working on the smeared corner of her card with the edge of a napkin, carefully trying to clean the glitter, gently pressing the torn corner flat. She was focused entirely on the card. She had not heard the conversation. Nathan watched her for a moment, her small hands working carefully on the damaged thing she had made, trying to fix it, trying to make it right again. He looked back at Thomas. Monday morning, he said. Thomas took the folder and stood. He looked at Nathan for a moment longer than necessary, and in that look was something Nathan recognized. Relief. Thomas Whitfield had been carrying this alone, or nearly alone, for months, waiting for Nathan to come back, hoping Nathan would come back, not knowing if he would. It's good to see you, Nathan, Thomas said. It's good to be here, Nathan said, and he meant it in a way that surprised him. Thomas walked away. Nathan sat at the table beside his daughter. She had gotten the worst of the glitter smear off the card and was now examining her work with a critical eye. The card was still damaged. The corner was still torn. The heel mark was still visible. But the words were legible. For the kids. Lily looked up at the portrait of her mother on the far wall. Catherine's face, 20 feet tall, laughing, full of life, full of the particular joy she carried whenever she was doing the work she loved. Mom would be mad, Lily said. Nathan looked at her. About what? About what that lady did, at the door. Yeah, Nathan said. She would be. But she'd say we still have to help the kids. Nathan felt his throat tighten. Yeah, she would say that too. Lily nodded, as though confirming something she already knew. She placed the card back on the table, centered between her plate and her water glass, and she straightened it one more time. Then she folded her hands in her lap and looked up at the portrait again. We're going to fix it, Mom, she said quietly. She said it the way she had said, "Hi, Mom," when they first walked in. Without performance, without awareness of the room, as a simple statement of fact spoken to someone she loved, whether that someone could hear her or not. Nathan put his arm around his daughter's shoulder and held her close. Around them, the gala continued. The chamber trio played. Waiters moved between tables. 300 people in formal wear carried on their conversations. And somewhere, in a manila folder that Thomas Whitfield had just carried back to his seat, $82 million sat in a column of numbers, circled in red, waiting. The gala ended at 11. Nathan carried Lily to the car because she had fallen asleep at the table, with her cheek resting on her folded arms and the card tucked under her hand. He lifted her carefully, and she stirred but did not wake. Her head settled against his shoulder. The red velvet dress was wrinkled at the waist, where she had been leaning forward. Thomas walked with them to the parking garage. Neither man spoke until they reached Nathan's car. Nathan shifted Lily's weight to open the rear door, and Thomas reached past him and opened it instead. "Thank you," Nathan said. "Nathan," Thomas stood with his hands in his coat pockets. His breath came out in thin clouds under the garage lights. "I should have pushed harder. I should have come to your house. I should have forced the conversation months ago." Nathan settled Lily into the back seat and buckled her seatbelt. She murmured something and turned her face toward the window. He closed the door gently. "You tried calling," Nathan said. "I didn't answer. I should have driven over. Maybe. But I wouldn't have opened the door." Nathan leaned against the car. "I wasn't ready, Thomas. I thought if I stayed away from all of it, stayed away from the foundation, the board, the offices, all of it, that it would protect her." He nodded toward the back seat where Lily was sleeping. "I thought distance was the same thing as safety." "And now?" Nathan looked at him. "Now I know that distance is just distance, and the people who filled the space I left did not fill it with anything good." Thomas nodded slowly. "The audit firm is Kessler and Briggs. Margaret Briggs is the lead partner. She's sharp. She's handled 3 nonprofit fraud cases in the last 5 years, 2 of which resulted in federal prosecution. She can have a team in the office by 7:30 Monday morning." "Tell her 7. 7 it is." Nathan drove home in silence. Lily slept the entire way. He carried her inside and put her to bed without changing her out of the velvet dress, because he did not want to wake her. He pulled the blanket up to her chin and stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her breathe. Then he went to the kitchen and sat down at the table and opened his laptop and did something he had not done in 8 months. He logged into the Foundation's administrative portal. His credentials still worked. Nobody had thought to revoke his access, or nobody had dared. He spent 3 hours reading financial statements, board minutes, budget proposals, staffing changes, every document filed since Catherine's death. He read the way a man reads when he is looking for the shape of a betrayal. Not the details yet, but the outline, the architecture of how it was built. By 2 in the morning, he had the outline. The restructuring had begun within 3 weeks of his medical leave. Victoria Crane had been appointed first. Then Marcus Devlin had been elevated to managing director, a position that had not existed in Catherine's organizational structure because Catherine believed in flat hierarchies and direct accountability. Devlin had created the position for himself, with board approval, and then used it to consolidate control over all financial authorizations. The programs had been defunded incrementally, not all at once. That would have been too visible. Instead, budgets were reduced by 15% in the first quarter, then by 30% in the second, then suspended entirely by the third. Each reduction was accompanied by a memo from Devlin explaining that the foundation was undergoing a strategic review to improve efficiency and maximize donor impact. The language was perfect. It was the kind of language that sounds responsible and means nothing. It was the kind of language that lets you gut a children's literacy program while describing it as operational optimization. Nathan closed the laptop at 2:15. He sat in the dark kitchen and listened to the house. The furnace cycling, the clock in the hallway ticking, the faint sound of Lily breathing in her room down the hall. Catherine would have caught this. She would have seen the first budget reduction and demanded an explanation. She would have read the memos and recognized them for what they were. She had always been able to see through institutional language to the intention beneath it. It was one of her gifts. Nathan had the gift of building things. Catherine had the gift of seeing what was wrong with what had been built. But Catherine was gone. And Nathan had been gone too, in his own way. And in the space they left, Marcus Devlin had built something very ugly, very quickly. Nathan went to bed. He did not sleep well. Monday morning, he dropped Lily at school and drove to the foundation's offices. He arrived at 6:45. Margaret Briggs and her team of 4 auditors arrived at 6:55. Margaret was 53, tall, gray-haired, with the demeanor of a woman who had spent decades examining numbers that people did not want examined. She shook Nathan's hand in the lobby. "Mr. Mercer, Thomas briefed me over the weekend. I've reviewed the preliminary documents he provided." And we'll know more by end of day. But based on what I've seen so far, you have a significant problem." "I already know I have a significant problem." "You have a bigger problem than you think." She said it without drama. She said it the way a doctor delivers results. Plainly, because decoration does not help. The consulting firm, Summit Strategy Partners, it's not just a pass-through. Based on the payment patterns and the registration details, I believe we're looking at a multi-layered shell structure. Delaware is the primary filing, but there are secondary entities, at least 2. Possibly more. How much time do you need? Give me the week. I'll have a preliminary scope assessment by Wednesday. Full report by Friday. You have until Wednesday. I want federal notification by Thursday. Margaret raised an eyebrow. That's aggressive. $82 million was stolen from children's programs. I don't have a lot of patience for caution right now. She studied him for a moment. Wednesday, she said. I'll make it work. The auditors went to work. They moved through the foundation's offices with the quiet, methodical efficiency of people who have done this before and know exactly which drawers to open first. Nathan gave them full access. Every server, every filing cabinet, every email archive. He spent the morning in Catherine's office. It had been converted into a conference room 6 months ago. Her desk was gone. Her bookshelves were gone. The framed photograph of Lily that had sat on her desk since Lily was 3 was gone. In its place was a long table, 8 chairs, and a whiteboard with the words Q4 Strategic Priorities written across the top in red marker. Nathan stood in the doorway and looked at the room that used to be his wife's and felt the cold, composed thing in his chest again. The thing that was past grief. The thing that had edges. At 11:30, Margaret knocked on the doorframe. "You need to see something," she said. Nathan followed her to the small office they had converted into their temporary workspace. 2 of her auditors were sitting at laptops with spreadsheets open on both screens. Margaret pulled a chair out for Nathan and sat down across from him. "We found the literacy program," she said. "Catherine's program. The one she built for rural Colorado." "I know the program. She built it from scratch. 900 kids across 3 counties. It was defunded 6 months ago. Every dollar of its budget was moved into the administrative line. But that's not what I wanted to show you." She turned one of the laptops toward him. "This is the payment record for Summit Strategy Partners. 12 payments over 11 months, as you know. But we've now identified the secondary entities. There are 2 LLCs filed at the same Delaware address. One is called Ridgeline Advisory Group. The other is called Peak Outcomes Consulting." "I've never heard of either one." "Nobody has. They don't have websites. They don't have employees. They don't have clients. What they do have are bank accounts that receive transfers from Summit Strategy Partners, totaling an additional $41 million. Nathan sat back in his chair. $41 million on top of the 82? On top of the 82. The total exposure, as of what we found this morning, is approximately $123 million. Nathan said nothing for a long time. Margaret let the silence sit. She understood that some numbers need time to be absorbed before they can be responded to. $123 million, Nathan said. That's not just the foundation's operating budget. That's endowment money. That's principal. Yes, they went into the endowment. Whoever structured this understood exactly where the money was and exactly how to move it without triggering the standard oversight mechanisms. Devlin. Devlin had the access. Whether he had the sophistication to design the shell structure himself is another question. This was not amateur work, Mr. Mercer. This was built by someone who understood nonprofit financial architecture at a very high level. Nathan thought about Marcus Devlin laughing at his table at the Gala. Relaxed, comfortable, a glass of wine in his hand. The face of a man who believed he had gotten away with it. "What about Victoria Crane?" Nathan asked. Margaret pulled up another screen. She signed 2 of the 12 authorizations. Both were for Summit Strategy Partners. Both were for amounts just under the threshold that would have triggered automatic board review. One for $950,000. One for $975,000. Just under $1 million each time. Exactly under. That's not a coincidence. Someone told her where to sign and how much to approve. Whether she knew the full scope of what she was enabling is a question for the prosecutors, not for us. Nathan stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. A normal Monday. Cars arriving, people going to work. The ordinary machinery of a day continuing while inside this building, the evidence of a massive theft was being assembled, page by page. "Margaret," he said. "Catherine built this foundation to help children who had nothing. She worked on it until she could not sit up anymore. She wrote notes from her hospital bed so that the work would continue after she was gone." He turned from the window. "I want every dollar traced. I want every account identified. I want the full architecture of what they built, and I want it documented so completely that when the federal prosecutors open the file, they don't have a single question that isn't already answered." Margaret nodded. "That's what we do." By Wednesday afternoon, the scope had expanded beyond anything Thomas Whitfield had anticipated when he first brought the manila folder to Nathan's table at the Gala. The auditors had identified not 2, but 4 subsidiary entities connected to the Delaware filing address. They had traced wire transfers across 3 states. They had found forged signatures on 7 board authorizations, signatures that were supposed to belong to 2 board members who, when contacted by Margaret's team, confirmed they had never seen the documents in question. Margaret delivered the preliminary assessment to Nathan in a conference call at 4 o'clock on Wednesday. Nathan was at his kitchen table. Lily was at a friend's house after school. The house was quiet. 42 potential counts, Margaret said. Wire fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, money laundering through the nonprofit structure, forgery of authorizing signatures, and depending on how the prosecutors want to frame the endowment withdrawals, potential embezzlement charges. The total? 123 million confirmed. There may be more. We're still pulling threads on a fifth entity that appeared in the records this morning. If that one is connected, we could be looking at 140, 150. Nathan wrote the number on a piece of paper. 123 million. He looked at it. He thought about what that money was supposed to have done. How many children it was supposed to have fed. How many families it was supposed to have housed. How many kids were supposed to have learned to read because Catherine Mercer decided they deserved the chance. Contact the federal offices, Nathan said. Tomorrow morning. Already scheduled. I have a call with the U.S. Attorney's Office at 9. Nathan hung up. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at the number on the piece of paper. A children's literacy program that served 900 kids in rural Colorado. Defunded. A transitional housing stipend that kept families off the street in Denver. Defunded. An after-school tutoring initiative that Catherine had launched with a single volunteer in a church basement. Defunded. A school supply distribution network that had operated in 4 counties for 9 years. Suspended. All of it gone. All of it folded into budget lines with names like organizational infrastructure and executive capacity building. All of it converted into wire transfers to shell companies in Delaware. Nathan picked up his phone and called Thomas. "How long did you know?" Nathan asked. Thomas was quiet for a moment. "I started noticing irregularities in June. Small things at first. Budget lines that didn't match board approvals. Payments to vendors I didn't recognize. I raised it with Frank Salter at a board meeting in July, and he told me it was part of the new operational strategy. I didn't believe him, but I didn't have proof." "When did you get proof?" "October. I hired a private forensic accountant on my own, paid for it out of my own pocket. He found the Summit Strategy Partners payments within 2 weeks. That's when I started trying to reach you." "And I didn't answer." "No, you didn't." Nathan closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, Thomas." "You don't owe me an apology. You lost your wife. You were grieving. No one expected you to be monitoring financial statements." "Catherine expected me to. She trusted me to protect what she built." Thomas did not respond to that. There was nothing to respond to. It was true. "What about Devlin?" Nathan asked. "Has anyone spoken to him since the gala?" "He was in the office Monday and Tuesday. He acted as if nothing had happened. He went to lunch. He took calls. He signed a requisition for new office furniture on Tuesday afternoon." New office furniture. A standing desk and an ergonomic chair, $1,400. Nathan almost laughed. It was not funny. It was grotesque. A man who had stolen $123 million from a children's charity was ordering himself a standing desk. "He doesn't know about the audit?" Nathan asked. "He knows auditors are in the building. He asked Margaret's team what they were working on, and they told him it was a routine compliance review. He seemed satisfied with that answer." Of course he did. Men like Devlin are always satisfied with the answer that lets them keep going. On Thursday morning, Marcus Devlin attempted to leave the country. He booked a flight under a variant of his name, Marcus D. Strovani, to Zurich via Toronto, connecting through Denver International Airport. He had packed 1 suitcase. He had not told anyone at the foundation he was leaving. He had not submitted a leave request. He had simply booked the ticket at 2 in the morning and driven to the airport at 5. Nathan learned about this at 7:30 Thursday morning when Margaret called him. "The U.S. Attorney's Office moved fast," she said. "Faster than I expected. They had agents at DIA within 2 hours of our call yesterday. Devlin was flagged the moment he checked in under the variant name." "They arrested him?" "Detained. At the gate. He was cooperative." "Cooperative how?" "He answered their questions. He did not ask for a lawyer, which his eventual lawyer will probably have feelings about. He confirmed his identity. He confirmed his position at the foundation. When they asked him about Summit Strategy Partners, he said, and I'm quoting from the agent's preliminary report, "I was following instructions." Nathan went still. "Whose instructions?" "He wouldn't say. He asked for a lawyer at that point." "So there's someone else." "That's what it looks like. Devlin may have been the hands, but someone else may have been the architect." Nathan sat with that information for a long time after the call ended. He thought about the shell companies. 4 of them. Layered. Professional. Not the work of a man who ordered standing desks and signed authorizations. The work of someone who understood financial architecture at a level that Devlin simply did not possess. He thought about Victoria Crane. She had signed 2 authorizations, just under the threshold, precisely calibrated. She had been appointed CEO 8 months ago, 3 weeks after Catherine's death, during Nathan's medical leave. Appointed by the board. But boards do not appoint people on their own. Someone nominates. Someone advocates. Someone makes the case. Nathan picked up the phone and called Thomas again. "Thomas, when Victoria Crane was appointed, who nominated her?" Thomas was quiet. "The nomination came from Frank Salter." Frank Salter. He presented her credentials at an emergency session, said she had extensive experience in nonprofit leadership, said she was exactly what the foundation needed during a transition period. "Did you vet her?" "I asked for her resume. It was impressive. Columbia MBA, 10 years at 2 major nonprofits in New York, consulting work in Washington." "Did you verify any of it?" Another pause. Longer this time. "No," Thomas said. "We were moving quickly. You were in the hospital. Catherine had just died. The board felt we needed immediate leadership. Frank pushed it through, and I didn't push back hard enough." "Frank Salter, the quiet one, the one who nods." "Yes." Nathan thought about Frank Salter. He thought about how Catherine had described him. Good with logistics, doesn't make waves. The kind of person you put on a board because they show up and they don't cause problems. Or the kind of person you put on a board because they will do what they are told and not ask why. "I want Margaret to pull everything connected to Frank Salter," Nathan said. "Every vote, every signature, every communication, going back to the day he joined the board." "Nathan, if Frank is involved, then this isn't just fraud. This was planned. Before Catherine died. Maybe before she was even diagnosed." Nathan felt something shift in his chest. Not the cold composure he had carried since the gala. Something darker. The possibility that the people who destroyed Catherine's foundation had been planning it while Catherine was still alive. While she was still writing notes on the yellow legal pad. While she was still fighting. "Pull everything," Nathan said again. "Everything." He hung up and sat in the silence of his kitchen. Lily would be home from school in 4 hours. She would come through the door and drop her backpack on the floor and ask what was for dinner. She would ask about the foundation. She would ask if they were still helping the kids. And Nathan would have to look at his daughter and give her an answer that was honest without being devastating. He looked at the photograph on the windowsill. Catherine on the hiking trail, laughing, reaching for the camera. "I'm going to fix this," he said to the photograph. "Whatever it takes, however deep it goes." The photograph did not answer. But he had not expected it to. He had expected only to say it out loud so that it became real, so that it became a promise instead of a thought. Outside, the Thursday sky was heavy and gray. A storm was coming. Nathan could feel it in the pressure, the way the air thickened before snow. It would be a long night. There would be phone calls and documents and decisions that could not wait until morning. But first, he had a daughter to pick up from school, and she would want to know that the work was continuing. And he would tell her the truth, which was that it was, and that it was harder than he expected, and that they were not going to stop. He picked up his keys and walked to the door. On the kitchen table, the piece of paper with the number still sat where he had left it. $123 million, stolen from children who would never know it was supposed to be theirs. Nathan closed the door behind him and drove to the school. He was 10 minutes early. He sat in the parking lot and waited, and when Lily came out through the double doors with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, she saw his car and smiled. And for one moment, the number on the piece of paper did not exist, and there were no shell companies, and there was no fraud, and there was only his daughter walking toward him across a school parking lot, alive and whole and smiling. He held on to that moment. He would need it for what came next. Lily climbed into the car and buckled her seatbelt and said, "Dad, a boy in my class said he saw you on the internet." Nathan pulled out of the school parking lot. What did he see? He said his mom showed him a video of a lady being mean to us at a hotel. He said it had a lot of views. He asked me if I was famous. What did you tell him? I told him no. I told him we were just trying to help the kids and someone was rude. She paused. Was that the right answer? Nathan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. That was exactly the right answer. He also said his mom cried when she watched it. Nathan did not respond to that. He had not watched the footage himself. He had been told about it by Thomas on Sunday morning. 11 different people had filmed the confrontation at the entrance of the Aspen Crown. By midnight Saturday, the clips had been viewed 3 million times. By Sunday morning, 6 million. By Monday afternoon, when Margaret's audit team was already pulling financial records from the foundation servers, the number had passed 14 million. The clips that spread fastest were not the confrontation. They were not Victoria grabbing Nathan's arm or the heel coming down on the card. They were the 2 seconds afterward. Lily holding the damaged card against her chest, standing very straight, not crying. An 8-year-old girl in a red velvet dress, refusing to break. Nathan had avoided his phone for most of the weekend. Calls from numbers he did not recognize. Text messages from people he had not spoken to in years. 3 voicemails from journalists. 2 emails from television producers. 1 handwritten letter slipped under his front door from a neighbor he had never met, which said simply, "Your daughter is braver than most adults I know." He had put the letter on the kitchen counter and looked at it for a while, and then put it in the drawer with Catherine's things. "Dad," Lily said from the back seat, "are the kids getting their money back?" "We're working on it." "How long does that take?" "A while, but we're going to make sure the programs start again first. The money for the programs, we can fix that quickly. The rest takes longer." "How much longer?" "Months, maybe more." Lily thought about this. That's a long time for kids to wait. Nathan looked at her in the mirror again. She was staring out the window, watching the houses go by. Her backpack was on the seat beside her, and the card was in the front pocket of the backpack. She had been carrying it to school every day since the gala. She had not told him this. He had discovered it on Tuesday morning, when he saw her slip it into the pocket before heading out the door. "You're right," he said. "It is a long time. That's why we're starting the programs back up this week." "This week?" This week. Which ones? The reading program first, the one in Pueblo. Mom's program. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good." That evening, after Lily was in bed, Nathan sat at the kitchen table and called Margaret. "The Salter connection," he said. "Where are we?" Margaret's voice was tired. She had been working 16-hour days since Monday. "We pulled his communications, email, internal messaging, board correspondence going back 3 years. Nathan, Frank Salter is not who you think he is." "Tell me." Frank Salter's logistics company, the one Catherine brought him onto the board for, was acquired 18 months ago by a holding group based in Connecticut. The holding group is called Meridian Capital Partners. Meridian has no public portfolio, no website, and no listed officers except one. Who? A man named Gerald Price. Ring any bells? Nathan searched his memory. No. It shouldn't. Gerald Price doesn't exist in any meaningful public sense, but his name appears on the registration documents for Ridgeline Advisory Group, one of the shell companies that received transfers from Summit Strategy Partners. Nathan leaned back in his chair. So Salter's company was bought by the same network that set up the shells. That's correct. And the acquisition happened 3 months before Catherine was diagnosed, which means the infrastructure for this scheme was being built while Catherine was still healthy, while she was still running the foundation. Nathan felt the kitchen go cold around him. Not the temperature. Something inside him. The recognition of how long this had been planned. How patient it had been. How deliberate. "They were waiting," he said. "That's what it looks like. They acquired Salter's company. They put Salter in a position of obligation, and then they waited for an opportunity. Catherine's diagnosis was the opportunity." Margaret did not answer immediately. When she spoke, her voice was careful. Her diagnosis created a timeline. They knew the foundation would eventually need new leadership. They knew you would be consumed with her care. They positioned the pieces in advance so that when the moment came, the transition would be fast. And when she died and I collapsed, they moved. Within 3 weeks. Nathan sat in the silence of his kitchen. He thought about Catherine in the hospital bed, writing on the yellow legal pad. He thought about her handwriting, still clear, still precise. He thought about the line on the last page. "Please don't let the children disappear." She had written that line while the people who would steal from her foundation were already in position. She had written it while Frank Salter sat on her board and smiled and nodded and waited. "I want Salter brought in," Nathan said. "The federal prosecutors are ahead of you. They executed a search warrant on Salter's home this afternoon. Found a laptop with encrypted files. The Bureau's digital forensics team is working on it now." "And Price? Gerald Price?" "Still looking. The name may be an alias. The prosecutors think he could be the architect, the one Devlin referred to when he said he was following instructions. But until they crack Salter's laptop or Devlin starts cooperating more fully, Price is a ghost." Nathan hung up. He washed his coffee cup. He stood at the kitchen sink and held the edge of the counter with both hands. $123 million. 4 shell companies. A board member who had been compromised before Catherine was even sick. An architect who might not even exist under his real name. And at the center of all of it, a foundation that was supposed to protect children, hollowed out from the inside, like a tree that looks solid until the wind comes. The phone rang. It was Thomas. "We have a problem," Thomas said. "The press has the audit story. Someone leaked it. I don't know who. It's going to run tomorrow morning in the Denver Post." "What do they have?" "Enough. They have the Summit Strategy Partners payments. They have the defunding of the programs. They don't have the full scope yet. They don't know about the secondary shells or the total amount. but they have enough to run a story that will define the narrative if we don't get ahead of it. Then we get ahead of it. Nathan, if we go public with this before the prosecutors are ready, it could complicate the case. And if we don't go public, the story becomes about what we were hiding, not what was stolen. The donors deserve to know. The families in those programs deserve to know. I'm not going to let someone else tell this story. Thomas was quiet. Margaret suggested a press conference. Controlled environment. We present the facts. We announce the program restorations. We get ahead of the narrative. When? Friday, day after tomorrow. It gives Margaret time to prepare a public summary and gives the prosecutors a heads up. Friday, Nathan said. Set it up. He hung up and sat at the kitchen table for another hour. The house was quiet around him. He could hear the furnace and the clock, and very faintly, the sound of Lily talking in her sleep. She did that sometimes. Small, unintelligible murmurs that sounded like half-conversations with people who were not there. Catherine used to stand outside her door and listen to it, and smile. Nathan thought about the press conference. He thought about standing in front of cameras and journalists and telling the world what had been done to his wife's foundation. He thought about the questions they would ask and the answers he would give, and the story that would be written about a man who disappeared for 8 months while his dead wife's legacy was ransacked. He deserved that story. He knew that. The story was true, but it was not the only truth. The other truth was that he was here now, and the programs were being restarted, and the money was being traced, and the people responsible were being held to account. That was also true. And Lily was asleep down the hall, holding a damaged card in her backpack, and she had told a boy at school that they were just trying to help the kids, and that was the truest thing of all. Friday morning, Nathan woke Lily early. He sat on the edge of her bed and waited for her eyes to open. "Hey," he said, "I need to talk to you about something." She rubbed her eyes. "Is it about the foundation?" "Yeah." "Is it bad?" "Some of it is bad. Some of it is about making things better. There's going to be a press conference today. Do you know what that is?" "It's when people talk to the news cameras." "That's right. I'm going to talk to the news cameras today and tell them what happened with the foundation. What was stolen. What we're doing to fix it." Lily sat up. "Can I come?" Nathan had already decided she would be there. But he needed to ask her, not tell her. Catherine had always insisted on that with Lily. You don't decide for her. You ask her, and you respect the answer. "I'd like you to come," Nathan said, "but only if you want to. You don't have to say anything. You can just be there." "I want to say something." Nathan looked at her. "What do you want to say?" "I don't know yet, but I'll know when I get there." He almost smiled. That was Catherine, word for word. Catherine used to say that about foundation events. "I'll know what to say when I get there." And she always did. "Okay," Nathan said. "Get dressed. We leave in an hour." The press conference was held in the Foundation's main conference room. Margaret's team had worked through the night to restore the room to its original configuration. The corporate logos were gone. In their place, the photographs were back on the walls. Children at program graduations, families in new housing, kids reading books in the gymnasium in Pueblo. The organizational timeline that Catherine had insisted on installing in 2017, a long horizontal display showing every program launched, every milestone reached, every child served, was back on the east wall where it belonged. 31 journalists sat in folding chairs facing a long table at the front of the room. 4 cameras, 6 board members along the side wall. Thomas Whitfield at the end of the table. Margaret Briggs behind him, not visible to the cameras but close enough to advise. Nathan walked to the front of the room. Lily walked beside him. She was wearing her school clothes, not the velvet dress. She was carrying both cards, the old one, damaged and soft from a week in her backpack pocket, and a new one she had made the night before at the kitchen table. Fresh index card, fresh glitter glue, fresh purple marker. The bow slightly more precise. Nathan sat down. Lily sat beside him. He adjusted the microphone. "My name is Nathan Mercer," he said. "I am the founder of Greystone Capital and the founding benefactor of the Catherine Mercer Foundation, which my wife Catherine built over 11 years to serve children in transitional housing, educational programs, and family support services across 6 states. He paused. 31 journalists waited. 8 months ago, my wife died. I stepped away from the foundation. During my absence, individuals within the organization's leadership systematically defunded the core programs my wife created and redirected foundation funds, including endowment principal, to a network of shell companies. The total amount we have identified so far is approximately $123 million. The room shifted. Pens moved. Cameras adjusted. The after-school tutoring initiative that served 400 children in Denver has been suspended for 5 months. The Transitional Housing Stipend Program in Colorado Springs has been defunded. The school supply distribution network that operated in 4 counties for 9 years has been shut down. And the Children's Literacy Program in rural Colorado, a program my wife built personally, a program that served 900 children, was quietly eliminated 6 months ago, and its funding absorbed into fraudulent administrative accounts. Nathan looked at the journalists. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The federal authorities have been contacted. A forensic audit is underway. One individual has been detained. Others are under investigation. I cannot discuss the details of the ongoing federal case, but I can tell you what we are doing right now. He laid out the plan. The literacy program in Pueblo would be restarted immediately, that week, with emergency funding from Greystone Capital. The tutoring initiative would resume within 30 days. The housing stipend program would be restored by end of month. The supply distribution network would be operational by the end of the quarter. An independent oversight committee would be established with no affiliation to Greystone or the Mercer family. Financial statements would be published quarterly and made available to any donor or member of the public who requested them. He spoke for 9 minutes. He did not use notes. He did not stumble. He said what needed to be said, and he said it clearly, and he stopped when he was done. Then he said, "My daughter would like to say something." Lily stood up. She stepped to the microphone. She was holding both cards, one in each hand, the old one and the new one. She held them up so the cameras could see them. "My mom built this," she said. Her voice was steady and clear, and it carried to the back of the room without effort. "And some people tried to take it, but we're not going to let them." She looked at the cameras, then at her father, then back at the cameras. "My mom said, 'Don't give up.' So don't give up." She stepped back. She sat down. She placed both cards on the table in front of her, side by side, the damaged one and the new one, and she folded her hands in her lap. The room was silent. 31 journalists, and 4 cameras, and 6 board members, and not a sound. The silence lasted 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then someone in the back row started clapping. A woman. Nathan did not see who. And the room joined. Not the thunderous applause of a ballroom. Something smaller, more certain, more precise. The kind of applause that is not celebrating a performance, but acknowledging a truth. Lily looked up at her father. "Was that okay?" she whispered. Nathan put his arm around her. "That was perfect," he said. And his voice broke on the last word in a way that 31 journalists heard, and not one of them wrote about. Because some things are not for the story. The questions came after. Nathan answered them for 40 minutes. He was direct. He was specific where he could be, and honest about what he could not discuss. When a journalist asked if he blamed himself for being absent, he said yes. He said it without qualification or excuse. He said, "I confused absence with protection. And in doing so, I left the thing my wife cared most about in the hands of people who did not care about it at all." When another journalist asked about Victoria Crane, Nathan said only that her employment had been terminated and that her involvement was a matter for the federal investigation. When asked about Marcus Devlin, he said the same. When asked about the possibility of additional suspects, he said the investigation was ongoing and he trusted the prosecutors to do their work. The last question came from a reporter in the front row, a man Nathan's age with gray hair and a notebook instead of a laptop. "Mr. Mercer, your wife's foundation raised nearly $4 million a year. The amount stolen is 30 times that. Where did the rest of the money come from?" "The endowment," Nathan said. "Greystone Capital's philanthropic endowment, which I funded personally, was the foundation's reserve. It was supposed to ensure the programs could continue for decades, even if annual fundraising declined. They didn't just steal from the operating budget. They went into the principal. They took the future." The reporter wrote that down. He looked up. "And you're going to replace it?" "I'm going to rebuild it, however long it takes." The press conference ended. The journalists filed out. The cameras were packed up. Nathan sat at the table with Lily and did not move for a long time. Margaret came over and put her hand on his shoulder briefly, then left. Thomas came over and sat down across from him and said nothing, which was the right thing to say. Lily picked up the old card and looked at it. The glitter was almost gone now. The purple ink had faded to a pale violet. The heel mark was still visible in the bottom corner. The bow was long gone. "Dad," she said, "can we put this somewhere safe?" "Where would you like to put it?" "On Mom's wall, at the office, with the pictures of the kids." Nathan looked at his daughter, 8 years old, holding a damaged card that she had made at the kitchen table while he stood at the stove, pretending not to watch. A card that had been stepped on and soaked and carried in a backpack pocket for a week and held up in front of 300 people at a ballroom and 31 journalists at a press conference. "Yeah," he said, "we can do that." They drove to the foundation's office that afternoon. Nathan walked Lily to the north wall of the main lobby, the wall where the photographs had been restored. He found a small frame in the supply closet. Lily placed the old card inside it, carefully, smoothing the wrinkled corners one last time. Nathan hung it on the wall between a photograph of a girl at a graduation ceremony and a photograph of a family standing in front of their new apartment. Lily stepped back and looked at it. "It fits," she said. Nathan looked at the card on the wall, damaged and faded and real, surrounded by photographs of children whose lives had been changed by the foundation his wife had built. The card did not match the photographs. It was not professional. It was not polished. It was an index card with smeared glitter and purple ink, made by an 8-year-old girl at a kitchen table. It was the most important thing on the wall. "Yeah," Nathan said. "It fits." They stood together in front of the wall for a while, father and daughter, and neither of them spoke, because some moments do not need words. They need only the presence of the people who understand what the silence means. Outside, the late January sky was turning dark. The streetlights were coming on. Somewhere in a federal building in Denver, Prosecutors were assembling a case that would eventually produce 42 counts against 3 individuals and uncover a fraud network that had been in preparation for over 2 years. Somewhere in a detention facility, Marcus Devlin was sitting in a room with his attorney, deciding how much truth he was willing to trade for how much leniency. Somewhere in Connecticut, a man named Gerald Price, if that was his real name, was about to discover that the walls he had built around himself were not as solid as he believed. But Nathan did not know those things yet. He knew only that his daughter's card was on the wall, and the photographs were back, and the programs were restarting, and the work his wife had built was not gone. It was damaged, it was diminished, but it was not gone. And damaged things, he was learning, could be restored. The donations began the afternoon of the press conference. Not the large institutional gifts, those came later, after due diligence calls, and board reassurances, and legal reviews that moved at the particular speed of organizations protecting themselves from liability. The first donations were small: $20, $50, $100. They came from individuals. People who had watched a clip of a girl in a red velvet dress hold up a damaged card and say, "Don't give up," and who had decided, sitting in their kitchens and their offices and their cars and parking lots during lunch breaks, that they believed her. By the end of the first day, there were 600 contributions. By the end of the first week, over 4,000. The total passed $2 million before Nathan had finished reviewing the foundation's restructuring plan with a reconstituted board. Margaret called him on Saturday morning. "You should see the donor messages," she said. "We're logging them as they come in. Most of them are a sentence or two. Some of them are longer." A woman in Ohio sent $50 and wrote that her daughter had been in transitional housing when she was 7, and that a school supply program had given her a backpack, and it was the first new thing she had ever owned. Nathan was at the kitchen table. Lily was eating cereal across from him, reading a book propped against the milk carton. He listened to Margaret and watched his daughter turn a page. "Keep logging them," he said. "Every one." "There's something else. I got a call this morning from the Whitmore Family Foundation in Chicago. They want to discuss a major gift. Their initial indication is 7 figures. "Who are they?" "Old money, 3rd generation. They fund education and housing initiatives across the Midwest. They said they've been watching the story, and they want to talk. Set up a call for Monday." By the end of the second week, 11 organizations had reached out. Corporations, family foundations, a university endowment in California. One by one, they contacted Thomas or Margaret or Nathan directly and said variations of the same thing. "We saw what happened. We want to help. What do you need?" Nathan worked with the reconstituted board through January and February. He was at the foundation offices by 7 every morning and home by 6 every evening, because Lily needed dinner and homework help, and the particular stability of a father who showed up at the same time every day. He did not miss a single evening. Catherine had taught him that. She had run a $4 million a year foundation, and she had never missed dinner. She used to say, "The work is important, but the table is sacred." He had not understood that fully until now. The restructuring took longer than he had hoped and moved more thoughtfully than he had originally planned, which meant it was done correctly. Margaret's oversight framework was implemented in full. Every program was reviewed. Every allocation was cross-referenced against its original purpose. Every vendor relationship was audited. The board was reduced from 9 members to 5, each personally vetted by Nathan and Thomas. The 3 members who had enabled the fraud, Frank Salter and 2 others who had voted for the budget reallocations without asking sufficient questions, were removed. Salter was facing federal charges. The other 2 were facing civil liability and the particular social consequences that accompany having your name in a federal fraud indictment. Nathan hired a new executive director. Her name was Rachel Donovan. She was 47 years old, and she had spent 12 years running a housing nonprofit in Minneapolis that had placed over 3,000 families in stable housing. She had no interest in corporate brand alignment. She had no interest in executive capacity building. She had an interest in outcome metrics for children, and she expressed that interest in their first meeting with a directness that reminded Nathan, painfully and beautifully, of Catherine. "I don't do galas," Rachel said, sitting across from him in the restored conference room. "I don't do brand strategy. I don't do donor cultivation dinners. I do programs. I measure results. If a program is working, I expand it. If it's not, I fix it or I end it. Is that going to be a problem?" "That's going to be exactly what we need," Nathan said. "Good, because I read your wife's original program documentation, the stuff from the early years, the yellow legal pad notes that your attorney submitted as part of the audit record." Nathan went still. "You read those?" "Thomas gave me copies. I hope that's all right." "It's all right. Your wife was one of the best program designers I've ever seen. Her outcome tracking was 10 years ahead of the field. Her cost per child metrics were extraordinary. The literacy program in Pueblo, the one she built from scratch, was running at half the cost per student of comparable programs nationally and producing better reading scores. Rachel leaned forward. "I don't say this lightly, Mr. Mercer. What your wife built was exceptional, and I intend to honor it by making it better." Nathan looked at Rachel Donovan for a long moment. "Call me Nathan," he said. "Nathan. When can I start?" "How about Monday?" "I was thinking tomorrow." Nathan almost laughed. He did not quite get there, but he was closer than he had been in months. "Tomorrow works." Rachel started on Saturday. She was in the office before Nathan arrived, which had not happened to him in a very long time. She had already pulled the enrollment records for every program and spread them across the conference table in color-coded stacks. "The literacy program can be back to full capacity by April," she said when Nathan walked in. "The tutoring initiative by March. The housing stipends are more complicated because the partner organizations need to reactivate their referral networks, but I can have that running by end of quarter. And the supply distribution? That's the easy one. The volunteers never actually stopped. They've been running it on their own, out of pocket, since the official funding was cut. 3 women in a church gymnasium in a town east of Colorado Springs have been buying school supplies with their own money for 5 months. Rachel shook her head. "Your wife built something that people refused to let die, even when the funding disappeared. Do you understand how rare that is?" Nathan understood. He understood it in a way that he could not articulate and did not try to. The board voted unanimously in early March to rename the foundation. The motion had come from Thomas Whitfield. He had written a 1-paragraph proposal that he read aloud at the board meeting in a voice that was steady until the last sentence, when it was not. "The foundation was always an expression of Catherine's purpose," Thomas read. "It should carry Lily's name forward, because it is Lily's generation the work is for." Nathan had not expected the proposal. He had not been consulted. He sat at the board table and listened to Thomas read the paragraph and felt something in his chest that was not grief and was not joy, but was somewhere between the two, in a territory he had not known existed. He looked at Thomas. "Does Lily know about this?" "I wanted your approval first. You have it, but I want to tell her myself." He told her that evening at the kitchen table. They were eating pasta. Lily had learned to make garlic bread the previous week and had produced a loaf that was aggressively buttered and slightly burned on one side, and delicious. "The board wants to rename the foundation," Nathan said. Lily looked up from her pasta. "Rename it what?" "The Lily Mercer Foundation." She put her fork down. She looked at him for a long time. She did not speak. Her eyes moved across his face in the way children's eyes move when they are trying to determine if something is real. "My name?" she said. "Your name." "But it's Mom's foundation." "It is. And Mom built it for children, for kids like you. Thomas said it should carry your name because you're the generation the work is for." Lily thought about this. She thought about it with the seriousness of an 8-year-old who has learned in the past several months that the world is more complicated than she had been told, and that names carry weight, and that the things adults build can be taken away if no one is watching. "Okay," she said, "but Mom's name stays too." "What do you mean?" "On the wall, at the office, where the pictures are. Mom's name should still be there so the kids know who started it." "It will be, I promise." Lily picked her fork back up. "Okay. Can I have more garlic bread?" The Lily Mercer Foundation held its first event under the new name in late March. Not a gala. Rachel had been firm about that. "No galas," she had said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. The first event should be a site visit. Put the board and the donors in the rooms where the work actually happens. Let them see what the money does." 43 board members, donors, and staff traveled to 3 program locations in Colorado over the course of a single day. They saw a literacy classroom in a converted community center outside Pueblo, where 22 children were sitting on a carpeted floor listening to a teacher read aloud from a chapter book. They saw a transitional housing unit in Denver, where a family of 4 had recently moved in, and the mother was standing in the kitchen, looking at the stove as though she could not quite believe it was hers. They saw the school supply distribution running out of the church gymnasium in the small agricultural town east of Colorado Springs, staffed entirely by volunteers. 3 women who had kept it going with their own money for 5 months because they refused to let the children go without. Lily went to all 3 sites. At the literacy classroom, a boy around her age approached her after the reading session. He had dark hair and serious eyes, and he was holding the book the teacher had been reading from. "Are you the one from the news?" he asked. "Yes," Lily said. He thought about this. "My teacher read us the story. She said you were brave." "I wasn't brave. I was just there." "That's what brave means," the boy said. "My teacher said brave means you show up even when it's hard." Lily looked at him. He looked back at her. They stood there for a moment, in the way children stand when they recognize that they are in the presence of someone who understands what a hard year feels like. "What's your name?" Lily asked. "Miguel." "Do you like the reading program?" "Yeah. I didn't used to like reading, but now I do. The teacher says I'm getting good." "My mom started this program," Lily said, "a long time ago, before I was born." Miguel looked at the book in his hands. "Tell her thank you," he said. Lily's face changed, just slightly. A movement around her eyes that was not sadness and was not joy, but was the thing between them. "I will," she said. Outside the church gymnasium, the late March sun was warm enough to soften the last of the snow along the fence line. Nathan stood with Rachel Donovan and watched Lily talking to 2 girls near the gymnasium door. The girls were showing Lily their new backpacks. Lily was examining the backpacks with the same serious attention she had given to the card she made at the kitchen table. "She's remarkable," Rachel said. "She is," Nathan said. He watched Lily for another moment. Her mother was too. It was a Tuesday in April when something changed. Small, almost invisible. The kind of change that only happens in a house where grief has been living for a long time and has finally, quietly, begun to loosen its grip. Lily came into the kitchen before school and found Nathan at the stove. He was making pancakes. This was not unusual. Tuesday pancakes had been their tradition since Lily was 4. But Nathan was also humming. Something tuneless and absent-minded. The kind of humming a person does when they are not thinking about whether they are humming. He had not hummed in the kitchen in a very long time. Lily noticed. She said nothing about it. She sat at the table and put her backpack on the floor and watched him flip a pancake with the confidence of a man who has made approximately 10,000 pancakes and is quietly aware of his expertise. "Dad," she said, "are we still helping the kids?" He slid the pancake onto a plate. He put the plate in front of her. He sat down across from her the way he did every Tuesday morning, the way he had done every Tuesday morning for 4 years, the way Catherine used to sit down across from both of them before everything changed. "Always," he said. Lily nodded, satisfied. She reached for the syrup. She poured it with the generosity of a child who has not yet learned restraint with maple syrup. And Nathan did not correct her, because some battles are not worth fighting. And this was every single one of them. After Lily left for school, Nathan washed the dishes. He stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the yard. The April morning was cool and bright. The daffodils along the fence line had come up 2 weeks ago. The same daffodils Catherine had planted the spring before the diagnosis. She had been on her knees in the dirt with a trowel and a bag of bulbs, and Nathan had asked her if she needed help. And she had said, "I need you to stand there and tell me they're straight because I can't tell from down here." The photograph on the windowsill showed Catherine on the hiking trail, laughing, one hand extended toward the camera, trying to stop him from taking the picture. He had taken it anyway. He had been glad ever since. "I think we're doing okay," Nathan said to the photograph. He said it in the casual, unhurried tone of someone continuing a conversation that had never really stopped. "Lily's good. She's really good, Catherine. You would be." He paused. He looked at the photograph for a long time. "You would know. You'd see it." He dried his hands. He went to his desk. He opened his laptop. The Foundation's quarterly report was due Friday. Rachel had submitted her program updates that morning. The literacy program in Pueblo had new enrollment numbers, up 40% from the previous quarter. Rachel had noted this in her email with 3 exclamation points, which Nathan found, to his mild surprise, entirely appropriate. 947 children were now enrolled in the programs that had been defunded 8 months ago, restored and rebuilt and running. Rachel's team projected 1,200 by the end of the year, 1,500 by the following year, with the new funding commitments. None of those children would ever know about the night at the Aspen Crown Hotel. They would never know about Victoria Crane or Marcus Devlin or the shell companies in Delaware or the $123 million that had been stolen. They would never know about the heel coming down on the card or the security guards moving toward the door or the 60 people in the lobby who watched and did nothing. They would know only that there was a program, that there was a teacher, that there was a book, that someone, somewhere, at some point, had decided that they were worth the effort. That was what Catherine had always said the work was about. Not the galas, not the grants, not the press conferences or the quarterly reports or the corporate partnerships, but the decision, repeated quietly in classrooms and housing offices and church gymnasiums, that a child's circumstances were not their destiny. Nathan typed the opening line of the quarterly report. He typed it and read it and did not change it, because it said exactly what it needed to say. Outside, a light snow fell. Not heavy. The kind of April snow that arrives apologetically and retreats by noon. It landed on the daffodils along the fence line and stayed for a moment, just long enough to be noticed, and then it was gone. The daffodils did not bend. They had survived the winter. They had pushed through the frozen ground and opened in the cold spring air, because that is what they were built to do. Nathan looked at the daffodils. He looked at Catherine's photograph. He looked at the screen in front of him with the enrollment numbers that his wife would have celebrated and his daughter would have nodded at with quiet satisfaction, and Rachel Donovan had marked with 3 exclamation points. The morning was bright. The house was warm. Somewhere down the road, Lily was at school, learning things, carrying her backpack with the old card still in the front pocket because she had decided it belonged with her, and Nathan had not argued because she was right. He went back to work. The winter had not broken them. It had taken from them. It had tested them in ways that were cruel and specific and deeply unfair. It had put a heel on a child's card and called grief a performance, and stolen $123 million from children who had nothing. It had asked Nathan Mercer whether absence was the same as protection, and it had answered its own question. But the winter had also revealed them. It had revealed a daughter who held a damaged card against her chest and refused to cry. It had revealed a father who stood in a lobby full of people who would not help and spoke the truth without raising his voice. It had revealed that the thing Catherine built was stronger than the people who tried to destroy it, because the thing Catherine built was not a budget line, or an endowment, or an organizational structure. It was a decision. A simple, stubborn, unbreakable decision that children matter, that their circumstances are not their destiny, and that the work of proving it must never stop. 947 children, 1,200 by year's end, 1,500 the year after, and growing, always growing, because someone had decided they were worth the effort. Because an 8-year-old girl had stood in front of cameras and said, "Don't give up." And the world had listened. And the world, for once, had not looked away. The daffodils straightened in the mild April air. The morning opened, and the work continued.